Board meeting of Thursday, January 29th, 2026. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance right here behind us. Face that flag. Ready? Go. Waiting for it. Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, there we go. Please call the roll.
Bruce Riston.
Couldn't hear you.
Sorry, Bruce Riston.
Here.
William Bynum.
Here.
Kyle Bailey.
Here.
Chair Conley.
Here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. Next thing up is election of chair and vice chair. Any volunteers?
Nominate Bill Conley. Chair.
Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Nominations are closed. Approve Robert's Rules of Order, whatever. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, vice chair. Who is our vice chair?
I nominate Bill Bynum.
Second.
Second.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're done with that. All right, next up, approval of the 12/18 Wyandotte Creek GSA Special Board Meeting minutes. Any errors, changes, or additions to the minutes? Any public comment on the minutes? There's no electronic comment, so I'm not going to ask you. Somebody's got to make a motion to approve them.
Motion to approve the 12/18/25 special board meeting minutes?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? Nobody's nay, so we're good. Unanimous. Consideration of appointment to the Wyandotte Creek GSA Advisory Committee to the WAC. Dylan.
Thank you, Chair Connolly. The Wyandotte Creek Groundwater Sustainability Agency received input and recommendations from the Advisory Committee, also known as the WAC, in which we have 10 different positions, some of them being at large with multiple different stakeholder positions. We currently have 2 vacancies. One of those vacancies is for the agricultural groundwater user stakeholder position, and one is for the tribal stakeholder position. We've received one application from Jacob Weinzinger for the agricultural groundwater user stakeholder position, and he has been verified and is confirmed to be eligible for the position. So today we ask that you review the application and appoint Jacob Weinzinger as the stakeholder representative on the advisory committee.
Any questions or comments by board members? Any public comment on this appointment? We'll close public comment. Wishes of the board.
Move to approve Jacob Weinzinger to the WAC.
Second it?
Any discussion? I'm grateful to get somebody.
He was very excited.
That's good. That's what we want. Somebody excited to do it too. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, he's appointed. We have no tribal representation.
No, we don't have any more tribal, but I can give you a little bit of an update on our tribal
Outreach.
connections, our outreach at the program manager's report.
Okay. We're up to fee structure and budget considerations. All right.
Thank you, Chair Connolly. Today we have Catherine Hansford from Hansford Economic Consulting, who has been has been developing our fee study, and today we're going to be looking at that fee structure and budget considerations.
So it's on. We're having some tech issues, but it's on.
Okay, I didn't know if I needed to press the button or the light to go green or something. Okay, is it going to come up on the screens here too or not? Okay. All right, well, good afternoon. Catherine Hansford with Hansford Economic Consulting. We are going to continue the discussion on a new fee for Wyandotte Creek GSA. Do I have to turn this on?
Just towards us. It actually should be.
It does say it's on, but,
You have to point this way.
oh, I have to point there.
Yeah, so right here, there's like a little dongle, you're just pointing towards.
Oh, there we go. Okay,
I
okay.
wonder if they do this on purpose. They put me here in the middle, and I can't see over there. I feel like a little kid in a high chair.
Okay, so we last talked about the fee in November, so a little recap before we get going. In November, you said to proceed with a regulatory fee to replace the current fee, and this new fee will be charged to all taxable and non-taxable parcels in the subbasin. So currently, only the taxable parcels are charged. So, but this is a fee that gets applied to all parcels, unless there are some parcels that are unusable or have a certain code with Butte County that either they're just unusable or they have not yet been categorized because something's happening with the parcel. So there are some parcels that don't get charged in a year. Only federally owned parcels are exempt from the fee. Next direction was to proceed with the Part 1 and Part 2 fee structure. And the third was to proceed with the Part 1 fee being a parcel fee. So now we're going to go through today's goals. We want to review the 5-year projected budget. I want to emphasize that this is a draft budget. It's being prepared by staff, and we're going to walk through that. Dylan will help walk through that piece of it. We are looking specifically for board direction on 3 items. We are looking at the costs that are included in the Part 1 fee and the Part 2 fee. We're starting out with kind of a baseline scenario in here, but we are looking for your input. We're also looking for your input on the Part 2 cost allocation between the agricultural and domestic users. And third, we are going to be asking you if you have any interest in excluding long-term fallowed or idle fields from the agricultural fee, and I'll explain that some more. And then finally, a concept that we did introduce to you in November, and based on all of the stakeholder input we have received, we are proposing to proceed with a reduced Part 2 fee for agricultural and domestic parcels that use imported water. So not just any type of surface water, we're talking about imported water. So it's Feather River water, it's being brought into the basin.
And I just want to make a quick note, because we do have the ad hoc, this budget right here at the very end of your packet. This is just a draft. And so some of those items, when we're talking about the cost allocations, that's going to be helpful when we go, like, we don't have to decide specifically today how to do that, but it would be the good direction for when the ad hoc meets and then we finalize this budget. So just know that we're still working on it and getting, now that we have more direction from the county, and now that we have a better understanding there and getting more estimates, we will have a more accurate budget later on.
In terms of selecting what we want these Part 1 and Part 2 fees to be, we're doing that part today, or is it more of, do we need to have kind of a more of an idea of what our budget is in order to go ahead and proceed with that part of it?
I think what we were hoping is, I mean, we could, if you really wanted to today, and you're like, no, this is great. We don't need to change this regardless of what the prices are. But I think it would be good for when we go into the ad hoc that you, like, that this conversation helps lead that. Because I think that if we have some of those basics of, and the priorities, when the ad hoc does look at it, they have a better idea of, you know, how we can change some things, but also we have to work with legal as well to make sure that they comply too. So it's a little bit of a process.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're going to walk through the fee steps. There's really 3 key steps in this. First is to determine what those Part 1 and Part 2 costs are. The second is to determine how many fee units there are. That means how many parcels are there that can be charged, how many cropped acres are there, how many managed wetland acres are there, and how many developed parcels are there. And then the third step is to actually do some division and calculate what the fees are. I'm going to walk through this. So here we are in step one. This is determining the part one and the part two costs. So this is our first thing that we're seeking direction on. We have a handout here that's included in the packet, and this presents the draft 5-year outlook for the budget from staff. Now, I will note that I have inflated the costs. So staff provides the costs, and then I inflate that to look at the 5-year outlook. So what I want to point out, and then I'll turn it over to Dylan, I just want to point out on this very first page, this chart here, you'll see in fiscal year 27, the total at the bottom is $436,000. What you're seeing on the slide is $470,000. I want to explain that. First of all, like I said, I inflate the costs, 3.25% a year. Then I look to what the fee level would be set at in fiscal year 27 that would allow over the next 5 years for you to maintain a reasonable or prudent reserve. And that's the blue chart that you see there on the slide. The bars show a projected cash balance, and then the line that goes through the bars, that's the target minimum reserve. So that's why the $470,000 is higher than the budget amount for fiscal year 27. You have the option every year to change the fee level, okay? What I'm attempting to help with is that if you set the fee a little higher than what the budget is, then each year, if you adjust it by an inflation factor, that you shouldn't have to have a big spike from one year to the next year. Okay, I'll turn over to Dylan.
Thank you, Catherine. So we're going to go ahead and look at that 5-year fee level baseline scenario, and I apologize, I did not put this as a slide, so we'll just have to look at the worksheet. But this is this part where we're kind of, last time, Director Bynum, you had mentioned some concerns about the distribution of that fee from Part 1 and Part 2, especially because of the domestic well part, or the domestic users and their share. So this budget was the, and the way the line items work was how the VINA GSA did it. So I think that was our base for how we were going to start. And the way they did it was that the very baseline part 1 is, what do we need to do to keep the lights on the GSA? And so then that part 2 was supposed to be the Sigma compliance reporting and the groundwater monitoring. So we can be a little bit more flexible in this because right now, part 1, it was about 52% of the total budget. So where we think that if that is still a concern and that you want to try and distribute that a little bit differently so that that part 1 parcel fee and the part 2 fee that's still to be determined, you can kind of look at that distribution. So some of the places I saw, so if that is still the wish of the board to either go ahead and do or at least explore, where I've found some ones that we could split a little bit is that there is the program manager line item. That would be for staff. Really, you could do a percentage of the fact that the GSA program manager does manage the program itself, but they also have to do a coordination of that part 2 fee. So we could potentially do percentages. So 80% of that time is up here on the part 1, 20% would be at that part 2, determined by how much of the work that staff would do. There's also the fee implementation, future fee study reserve. I do think that those are, we believe that those could probably be split percentage-wise as well. The fees are both used for keeping the GSA going, but they're also used for the annual reporting, all of those items. So I do think that's another spot where we could split depending on how legal would have to work with us on that to see exactly how to do that. fee study reserve, county tax roll support. I believe some of those administrative ones are the ones in which we could redistribute some of those costs so that I think for the way this is a little bit simpler. It's just a little bit more straightforward, but that might not be the perfect structure for this GSA. So I think that's what we're hoping to kind of have the board discuss is, one, do you want us to explore that? Do you want the ad hoc to explore it? And to what extent do you think that percentage should look like? Or are there thoughts on that? Is what we're hoping for direction today. So it would be direction to staff, but also to the ad hoc.
You got a comment?
Oh, I was seeing what Bill thought there.
Yeah, as I said last time, I just want it to be as fair as possible. And I know domestic water users use a lot less water, but there's a lot more of them. So I just want to recognize that it should probably be a little more reasonable than what it was. The percentage is, whatever the board thinks is fair is fine with me.
So I take that direction as just to explore what those options are and maybe come back to this board in the fee study and present what maybe those different options look like and the defensibility from legal counsel. Does that sound?
Yes.
It's hard, it's really vague on this point. What are we necessarily doing for them, and how do we, I mean, the impact to them being a domestic user versus an ag user. There is fairs in August, by the way. I'm struggling with that. The other thing, my mind was always going in a circle. I'm on a lot of different boards, and I understand government quite a bit, but I don't understand why we'll need a reserve, because we're going to collect the money every year no matter what. It's not like the economy goes down, we collect less tax. Our fee's set. So I know it's always prudent to have a reserve if you have a need for a reserve, but I'm trying to get my mind around any single scenario where we actually need any large reserve, unless there was something thrown at us by the state as an unfunded mandate or something, but then we could raise the fees. So I think that a low reserve is where, am I making sense to you?
Yeah, you are.
It's
So
not
there
a
is-
business, it's not a
Yeah.
government entity that where our tax rates are going up and down. We're flatly so a reserve should be pretty small.
Yeah, so the one consideration for that is just the cash flow timing, because the money comes in from the county's tax disbursements, right? So it comes in, usually it's December, April, and June. So you can
So
have a
it's
period
more
from.
gap funding than a reserve.
Exactly, yeah.
But we should, again, keep that as small as necessary, because otherwise it doesn't make sense to me.
I
And
think.
I don't know, I don't think there's anything we're gonna do here that's gonna make everybody happier, come out fair, but I can't visualize it. I can't visualize
Why we would need it.
why we charge these people this much because they're gonna get this result, where I think we had it all figured out prior. I did.
And I think we can flesh this out a little bit more in the ad hoc, but once we take a closer look at what we already have been putting aside a reserve for legal defense, for the fee study, and like some of these charges, like if we look at
There's the need for a reserve, legal defense.
Yeah.
Which we have been putting money into.
Which, yes. So I do think
Yes.
that's something that we could evaluate and look at how much reserve we have for each category. And then that's something we can bring back to tighten up. But so again, a lot of these numbers are flexible.
Yeah.
And
As far as the percentages, getting back to that a little bit, would that be in the ad hoc? Would that be something where it could be explored, whether it's part one is just a flat parcel charge across everybody, and then the agricultural pumpers are solely responsible for part two? Is that the kind of flex we're talking about, or are we
so
just talking about moving pieces
we're just-
within? part one and part two.
Sorry. We're talking about moving the pieces, but I think what would help is at the ad hoc is to be able to show you how that changes the resulting fee schedule from making those
Yeah.
determinations, right? So you could have.
And one more thing on the projections. I mean, I'm at RCRC and there's talk of less monitoring where you're healthy. I know that's unlikely, but it would be so prudent to argue that if we're healthy and we're proven healthy like 3 years in a row, why do we have to do all that monitoring unless there's some sustained drought or actual change in the climate? Does that make sense to you? We could drop that monitoring and save everybody money. Is that something that we can work on later?
One of the really nice things about having a Prop 26 fee, a regulatory fee instead of a 218 type of fee, is you have flexibility every year. You know, I think the goal you'd want to set it starting at a fee level that you think is going to be about the right fee level that you just apply an annual inflationary index each year. But you always have that flexibility. Say you get a big grant in for a cost you thought you were going to have to pay for. Maybe then Dylan could come to you in March or April and say, well, this is what the cost index does, but we don't need to go that high.
Yeah, but when you're funded, it's hard to get a grant. It's when you're not funded, you get grants. Yeah. Sorry.
As far as for board direction, are you looking for a dollar value for that revenue that you'd like us to propose, or just a direction in terms of how we want those percentages allocated between part one and part two?
So I think we want to be able to have enough information that when we as you as the ad hoc meet together, you know what the board's priorities are. So I think when I heard some of the direction last time, it was that when we looked at those percentages of how much domestic paid versus how much ag pays, there was some concerns of like what that distribution looked like. So I think today, looking at it, the hope was to say, here were some of those options where we can make some of those changes and address that concern. And then if the general direction I hear is like, yes, we want to explore that, and it would be good to look at multiple options, because some of this it's playing with the Excel and seeing with legal counsel how we can word it, because we want to make sure that it's legally binding and that it is true to what it is. So it would have to look at the staff time, how much we think that we could justify, like this is a part one, but it applies to part two. So I think from what I'm understanding and getting back is the ad hoc should go in, we'll provide different options of what that could look like, and then the board maybe come together and decide which distribution you think works best for the GSA.
I think it's reasonable to explore all of that, whether it's movement between part one and part two where reasonable, or whether it's, if it's possible, just, the part one is total is every parcel, and then part two is solely on the groundwater users, or some combination of those things. I think it'd be worthwhile to explore to make sure we can make it as fair as possible. Because I mean, with this scenario, I think the parcel fee on de minimis users is quite a bit higher than what we were looking at originally when we were kind of looking through the draft scenarios in November. And I do think it's pretty high, so I would love to see it come down, and however we can make that happen, I think we should explore that.
And just for the timing's sake, because we want to try and get as much as we can done in March, and I know I've made that a little bit harder. Luckily, Cami will help with that, will be to hopefully have the ad hoc make a lot of these decisions beforehand, with the goal that we understand the board, and that when we present this budget, it would most likely be approved and we can move forward with those assumptions. So I think we're in a pretty good spot now where we have a lot of draft work already done. We have the bones in there, so now we just kind of have to fill it in.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to the next one, we were looking for direction on. We had talked in November how in the part two fee. There's a Part 2 fee for agriculture, and there's a Part 2 fee for the domestic users. And the way that the cost gets split between those two different types of users is based off of the historical amount of groundwater used by each of those groups. If we look back at the last 4 years, that percentage is about 96% agriculture, 4% domestic. I also think it would be reasonable to round that to a 95%, 5% split, because these numbers are not perfect. But we're looking for direction there. You know, do you want to stick as closely to the data at the 96%, or would you rather say, well, it's about 95%?
That one makes sense. I can do the 95. I mean, I get it, because domestics are everywhere, and they might have more impact, and they might even pollute more readily by not having a good sealed well or something. I don't know. I can see that, 95.5. I don't have any trouble with that one. That one actually makes sense.
I'm fine with whatever the decision is there, and that would be one of those things that if it was a sticking point or something, I'd be interested in looking at scenarios where that Part 2 is just on the agricultural, you know, I don't know if that can happen or not, but if that is the thing that could alleviate some of that.
So we did ask about that with legal counsel, and because this is a usage base, we have to be sure to cover that we are, because both ag and domestic use it, that's how we have to look at it and justify it. So we can't, yes, we have to charge both, and we need to have a reason to why we chose that percentage.
We can all live with that, right?
Yeah, I don't think it matters.
So you got clear
Yes.
for once.
Yes.
direction.
Yes, thank you.
There's no clouds on that one.
All right, so the second step is identifying the units. We use a mapping software to do this. We spent extensive time researching the managed wetlands acres and how we would identify those acres. We did come up with a good, trustworthy database to use for that. That's CalBIOS, which is a California Department of Fish and Wildlife data set. And the managed wetland acres must be in a parcel that has a conservation easement, because that means it's truly managing the wetlands. So yeah, we did spend considerable time on that.
Well, with my other hat on, you know, everybody loves to create a wetland and all that, but there's unintended consequences, there's impacts on the neighbors, and then they don't pay taxes, and we share a lot of water with them, which I'm a hunter. I'm all for them, but yeah, I think they should pay. I really do. I don't think they should slide.
I think another thing that you could think about with that is that under the state's irrigated lands program, managed wetlands are required to pay. They are treated the same as agriculture.
I think we should do that.
Okay.
I want to point out, it's really cool that we get to put assessment on state property, because they're the ones forcing us to do that. If only we could do it to federal property too, but I like it, we can do it to state property.
Yeah. Okay, so the proposed adjustment, this is for the imported water parcels. So parcels that get Feather River water would pay a lower Part 2 fee because they help improve the groundwater storage in the basin's water budget. And the fewer impacts there are to that water budget, the fewer the Part 2 costs will be generated. That was something we heard pretty loud and clear from stakeholders and what people felt would be equitable.
Because they're contributing to recharge, basically.
Yes, in fact, the next slide, it tries to demonstrate that. So you have this, if you have more surface water inflow coming in, exactly, it goes down into the ground, you'll have, it will help contribute to the quantity of water in the aquifer. Okay, so I wanted to explain how that would work. It mostly impacts the domestic, not the agricultural. So the South Feather Water and Power Authority, their domestic service that they provide is 100% imported water. So parcels receiving their domestic water from South Feather Water and Power would not pay a Part 2 fee. Thermalito and Cal Water users, they are supplied with mostly imported water, but they do also, the two agencies do also pump groundwater, and I'll show you some data on that here shortly. So they would pay a lower Part 2 fee, but they would still pay a Part 2 fee. On the agricultural side, there are a couple of fairly large land holdings adjacent to the river that do pump surface water, and this is Feather River water. It only is a handful of parcels, but they do have large pumping. Oh, not pumping, excuse me, diversions. So for those handful of parcels, they would pay a lower Part 2 ag fee. But there's not many of them. It's literally a handful. But we want to treat
They have
them.
very old established water rights, but they do pump because they got to put a pipe over there. They don't actually just divert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right. So then moving on, I did want to talk about the definitions. So for agriculture, we have two definitions. Both would be charged the same fee per acre. So we have cropped acres and managed wetlands. The cropped acres are identified as land with a crop mapping, like a field on it that's identified with Land IQ's data. The reason why I wanted to talk about this a little bit is that in Vina GSA, they exclude the idle and the unclassified crop codes. So if there's maybe a crop that was grown for a portion of the year and they couldn't identify what the crop was, or perhaps the field was idle for a year or 2 years, then there was a strong desire in Vina to not charge those parcels. In Wyandotte Creek, you actually don't have any parcels that fit in those definitions currently. All of the land is being, that is growing, the remote sensing is able to determine the crop, and there's no idle or unclassified crop codes. What I wanted to bring up to you was, though, if you had any interest in making a long-term idle parcel, so that means it's been idle for at least 3 years. If you have any interest in making those acres have a 0 Part 2 fee. Again, there's none of them right now.
So would this be if there was like a land use type change, like they are fallowing rice ground or?
That could be a agricultural practice too, like if you're organically growing, you'd till under and fallow for 3 years or something. Mm-hmm. But I don't see it's usually a year, right? I mean, like.
Yeah. I don't know.
But would it entice people? Why would they do it?
I don't think, I mean, honestly, I could have not brought it up to you at all. I just wanted to because we talked about it in Vina.
Well, we have some old rice ground that has just turned into pasture land and has been for 40 years. I mean,
But that won't be picked up, so.
it won't be, I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
that's not what we're talking about.
I used to hunt pheasants on that, by the way.
Exactly, yeah. It looks like rice, but it's been fallowed forever. That's not exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about something that's been irrigated within the past couple of years, but they've ripped out an orchard or they've
So take the orchard, for example. If they have ripped it out and it's been idle for at least 3 years, meaning it's in its 4th year of being idle, that code would pop up as an I-4, meaning idle for 4 years or more. At that point, you could say, we're not going to charge the fee on that land.
I'm not sure is the juice worth the squeeze in that case, because they really are rarely doing that. It's probably gonna go right back into a new planting or something like that, generally.
Does it make it easier for us to leave it alone, or is it,
What's easier?
let's leave it alone?
I would leave it alone, actually. I just
right,
thought
there
you
you
might
go.
want to talk about it.
No, I think we wait till it comes up.
Okay.
We'll be all gone, but it'll,
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that direction.
plus, people are weird. They might look at that and go, hey, I'm gonna follow my land for 3 years. I don't want to pay that thing once. Don't give them a reason to do it. Right.
Okay. All right. And then just the definition of domestic, we're going to identify that it's a parcel that has a building or a structure on it, usually identified by the assessor. Sometimes the assessor's data doesn't have the full picture, and we rely on a secondary source, which is the FEMA structures maps. So we use those two sources. All right. We can skip this one. If you just wanted to see, these are the different codes that we look at. We've got various different types of agricultural codes, but
Is golf course considered?
yes, it is. That is UL. Yes. All right. So then we perform the fee calculations. So part one, we divide the total cost by the total number of the fee-paying parcels. And part two, agriculture gets divided by the number of cropped acres and managed wetland acres, and the domestic costs get divided by the number of developed parcels. This is just a quick recap before we kind of get into more of the meat here of a comparison between the current and the new fee structure. Kind of as a reminder, we already said this, but we're charging all non-federal parcels unless they are considered unusable by the Butte County Assessor. Agricultural parcels will now pay for the cropped or managed wetlands acreage only, not for the entire parcel. Grazing land will only pay the parcel fee in Part 1. Currently, they pay for the entire acreage. And then finally, parcels using the imported water would pay less than parcels using groundwater, and or they might use some creek water too. Okay? So now getting a little bit more into the meat of the numbers. Again, draft numbers. I have shown these calculations using a fee level starting at $470,000. I've used the baseline scenario split where 52% of that cost is in the part 1. I stuck very true to the data on the 96.4% split for the part 2, but we'll change that to the 95.5. And so you can see the calculation here, the total at $20.50 per parcel for part 1. And then for part 2, that agricultural fee being $15.58, again, just for the acreage that's cropped or managed wetland. And the domestic fee at $3.78. Now, this is before any adjustment for imported water.
I would just real quick like to note too that these numbers look very drastic from our current fee structure. So remember that we are not necessarily comparing what this fee is to last year's fee as much as we are comparing this fee structure to the current fee structure. So I just think it's a couple slides down, but I wanted to give you a heads up.
Yes. Okay, I want to explain then the imported water adjustment. How do we determine how much less a parcel that receives imported water would pay? And we'll start with the domestic users. So I have a table here. I don't want to go into detail on it, but it provides the data on how many acre feet have been from surface water, which is the Feather River water for Cal Water and Thermalito, and South Feather Water and Power. So from this data, what it tells me is that the Cal Water and Thermalito users should get a credit of 75% of that fee. So for a home in Thermalito or in Oroville, they would pay 25% of the Part 2 fee compared with a developed parcel outside. So like a domestic user, I've forgotten the name of that. Community. Palermo, yeah. Or the ones further south, what's that one? Honka, thank you. That's the one I was thinking of. Okay, so it's based on data. That's what I pulled all the data directly from the state. And South Feather Water and Power did also provide data for that. Okay, so then I wanted to demonstrate what that would look like. Okay, so now at the bottom of this table, what you see is that if it's a parcel that's only using groundwater, that developed parcel will pay $3.76. And for a parcel that's using at least a portion of their water is imported water, they're 25%, so 94 cents. Okay. And then for agriculture, same type of calculation was performed. And for them, the calculation is that they would get a 15% credit. So they would pay 85% of what other agricultural parcels pay. Again, this is literally a handful of parcels. It's only about 5 of them. And yeah, so it's all based on data. Okay, so at the bottom of this table, groundwater only parcel here would pay $15.58 an acre, and if that parcel uses imported water, that's $13.26 an acre. All right, so this is really, I think, the slide that Dylan was trying to just explain, that if you were to apply the budget of $470,000 to your current fee structure, what would those fees look like? This is on the left side of the slide. So your current max fee will go to an irrigated groundwater parcel. Your current max fee is $13.86 an acre. At a budget of $470,000, that would go up to $26.92. So we have the fee structure change, and then you have the budget change, and they're two quite separate things. Because on the right-hand side, you see the table under the new fee structure at $470,000, and let's say a agricultural parcel, it's going to pay the $20.50 for the parcel, and then $15.58, but only on the cropped acreage of the parcel. So compare that with $26.92 over the entire acreage of the parcel. The new fee structure, in fact, has less of an impact than if you were to just apply the new budget to your existing fee structure. Any comments, questions on that?
This is dry stuff.
It is,
that, right?
I know. I know. Okay, well, let's do some examples. I think that always helps. Okay. All right. So here is a table that shows the calculations under the new fee structure. And it shows how every single one of these different users is getting the $20.50 per parcel for Part 1. Then for Part 2, it depends on whether they are agriculture or if they are a domestic user. I would draw your attention to see the difference in the domestic users. At the top of the table, the private well pays $3.76 for the Part 2. The South Feather parcel does not pay a Part 2, right? That's $0. And the city of Oroville resident, they pay 94 cents for part two. So you can see the difference between the three different domestic users, depending on who's providing the water to them. It's not that much of a difference. It's still looking at about $2 or less per month if you want to put it on a monthly basis. And then the agricultural examples are below. And I think what's important to see here is at the very bottom, the rangeland parcel is just paying the parcel fee. And the next slide compares then what they would have paid, or what these examples would have paid at the $750,000 level under the current fee structure and under the new fee structure. So I think what we knew would happen here is that the domestic are paying more, that most of the agricultural parcels will pay less, with the exception of the managed wetlands.
Because they weren't really included in that first.
Right. Yeah.
So they were
The-
paying just the non-irrigated
Yeah.
fee at that time.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think this would be a good opportunity when we talk to the ad hoc, like when we were talking about dividing, what we can provide is how these fees would change as well. Instead of just here's the budget and the percentages, we can also show how the fees might change based on the distribution of line items.
I'm just asking, so you can tell me this is silly, but is there a way to just, to reverse this and say, that seems like a really high parcel charge for domestic and herbal? Is there a way that we can say, we're willing to go $15 for the parcel, then we can plug that number in and see kind of what the revenue spits out? Is that it doesn't really work that way?
No, legal will say no. Legal will say you have to say what costs are in each part, and then from that you calculate the fee.
So we have to make the fee fit the budget, and we aren't able to say this is what we think is reasonable, and then
It has to be justified. So you have to have a good reason for why certain costs are in part one and why certain costs are in part two.
oh, okay, right, that I understand. As far as our total budget, are we able to say this is kind of the ballpark we want to be in, and figure out what the fee is from there, or can we say we like this number for the parcel fee, and now it gets us to about this much revenue, so let's make that revenue? It doesn't, we can't do that.
I think what we can do is provide different options of justifications as to why we do certain changes to that part one and part two fee. I think we can evaluate and see how much of a difference, look at them a little bit closer, and then we would look and see, because again, part of it is this legal justification. So I think that's what we're hoping that we can do with the ad hoc.
You just can't say it that way.
I'm not great at figuring this stuff out, so.
You are doing great. Matter of fact, you should be right here. I should be over there.
We already voted on that. It's done.
It's still, I mean, the only thing good I can say, it's an annual fee. It's not a monthly fee. I don't know. What do you think, Bill?
It seems like it's more complicated than it needs to be.
But we're trying to work around, I mean, we're trying to show a relationship with it when you actually receive, or you actually use this much water, so we can relate that, and then how much you actually receive from, we're dividing up all these reports. The only thing we have to do is those damn reports. Could we just fake it?
I think it's this fee structure is responsive to what stakeholders told us. We talked to various groups about equity, and that's exactly what this fee structure does. Yes, the imported water complicates things a bit. I agree. But from the perspective of those folks like Cal Water and Thermalito, they use a large amount of imported water. They're helping the basin. And so we wanted to be cognizant of that. So it adds a little bit extra administration, a little more complexity, but it helps to achieve the goals of the stakeholders.
Okay, so what's the average bill at South Feather and/or Cal Water?
Okay, so that's actually on this chart right here. If you look in column, it's got a letter A. Okay, so it's a very small difference. South Feather's bill would be $20.50.
No, I mean,
Oh,
what
sorry.
is their, like, annual average bill for a domestic?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I don't
So that
know.
I could kind of justify my mind that $24 isn't a big deal. Do you?
Water usage?
Yeah, for a year,
South
average.
Feather's probably in the low 30s. Cal Water's in the 90s
For a month,
a month.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we are.
You're scaring me. 'Cause even myself,
we're 80,
wouldn't.
but that's water and sewer. That's a month.
So if you're looking at a $1,000 bill, a $600 to $1,000 bill, and you add $25 to it over a year, I can kind of justify that. Can you see that, Bill?
Yep, I can.
You see it that way?
Yeah.
So, and we can work in the budget ad hoc when we arm wrestle over that stuff, but we can't say, we can't give you a number. So we'll figure out the budget and then we can work that down to.
I'm just trying to get, I mean, I'll be blunt. I want to be able to look somebody in the eye on the street and say, hey, you're paying, $1,000 a year for water. We're forced to do this by the state. Your bill's going up $24.26 a year. I can do that.
$2 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could put a percentage on it, that's probably even better. It's going up 1% or whatever.
Something where we can, because
I'm still gonna try and get you.
no, we don't like it. I mean, consultants sitting here, you realize, when this first started, I said the day that it cost somebody some money, we'll probably have some people in here, and we did, and so now we get to redo it. They had, 2 years to come talk to us.
They have.
Now they have, Well, is there any radical change in direction or anything? Okay, first let's ask the board. Is there any radical change in direction you want to make, like really lower something, change the percentage?
I don't think we can do that until we get the budget lined out now, is that correct?
So I think we can have some general priorities.
Okay,
of-
so let me ask this. Is there any clarifying questions on that side of the dais that you want to ask us so that you don't come back with something and we blow it up?
So I think for clarification, we know that we want to look into an equity of domestic versus agricultural, and also to consider what their water bills are and maybe what that percentage is towards that.
And I think if you bring that to the ad hoc, what I'm going to ask for individually is bring me a justification. If you can, in the ad hoc, come up with a justification of where we're at, then we're good. We can move forward.
Maybe some budget scenarios, different levels maybe, and see kind of what that looks like, and then maybe what the corresponding fees would be with those different kind of budget scenarios maybe.
Yes, and I think we can, with the ad hoc, we can provide multiple examples of the different ways that will look, like on one level to the other, and then we can narrow it down from there. I think it's kind of a step by step. Yes, but I do think like for priorities today, I think it's just like looking at from what I'm seeing is we don't have an exact number that we're looking for as much as we do want to consider the equity of who's paying the bill, how much they're paying, and then also looking at what that fee is and compared to what they're paying in water bills.
Have we presented this to the boards of TID and South Feather?
So we have had discussions with all three, Thermalito Water and Cal Water, and with South Feather River. All have been supportive and they're willing to give data. Some of the points that Catherine had brought up in regards to why Thermalito and Cal Water would pay less fees from some of the feedback that we got from the advisory committee and also the representative from Cal Water.
Okay, so there's no big blow up coming then there. Well, all right, so do you have enough direction?
I do, yes. I got
What a
very
hard
clear.
job you have.
I got very clear direction on B and C. We're going to keep working through A. And I think I didn't hear any concerns or objections with continuing with a lower Part 2 fee for the imported water parcels. So I think
No, it's justified. I mean,
direction.
justified and rational. So.
We have just a couple more slides left. We did want to explain to you how the timeline moves forward from here, what needs to be done, because there are a few things we have to do. We have to meet California's legislative requirements for adopting new fees. So our goal is that we would have a draft report ready for legal review and for the management committee in February. We would present that draft report to you at the end of February. We would hold, we were thinking webinars rather than actual workshops, physical workshops. We actually do get pretty good attendance with webinars, and oftentimes we don't with physical workshops. So it might actually be better. Yeah. So that's what we're thinking. That would be sort of early to mid-March. And then the goal then is in March that you would approve the draft report and you would set the public hearing date. And we would allow ourselves a little bit of time here so that you would hold the public hearing in May. We have a requirement to have all data available to the public at least 20 days before the public hearing. And we have a requirement for publishing in the newspaper for 14 days before the public hearing. So we must adhere to that. So the time moves fast, and that's why we need to get our budget, the fee level set here pretty shortly.
Annual flexibility. Does that change with the fees?
Yeah, so every year you're going to have the, like you just said, you have the ability to change it. What you're going to do is in the fee resolution itself, you would state how that process looks each year. So you can dictate that really. What I would recommend, what most GSAs are doing, is that you have an automatic inflator that's tied to a particular cost index, but that you have a cap on it. Most GSAs are using a cap of 4%, but you can pick your cap, bearing in mind that inflation is an annual average of 3 to 3.25% a year. And so that kind of gives guardrails as to what this fee might increase each year.
Any other questions? Any other direction needed?
No, thank you for your time.
All right. Any public comment on this matter? Was that like, just,
No.
I'll close public comment. Thank you, we'll move on. Reports and correspondence. How come I feel like I was in a boxing match?
I thought that was fun. Alrighty, thank you, Chair Connolly. So this is my last program manager's report before I leave, so I'm gonna make the best of, leave on vacation. Clarify, I'll be back in April. So,
After May and after everything.
I don't know, Vietnam seems really nice. I don't know, and it's affordable, but I'll be back. So in regards to timing and all of that, my hope is, again, this fee study, we want to get by really fast. So I'm going to be reaching out to the ad hoc very soon. So hopefully we can get together for one meeting while I get to be there. While I'm away, though, Cammie will be taking over the project management on my part for the fee study and most likely the point of contact. My email will give you a out of town, but Cammie will be here, and so and also we'll be doing GSP items, so that should be coming soon with the projects. So most all of that is covered. So the only thing is you just won't see me, but I will remember you all in the days that we have meetings. So then just to let you know what we're kind of working on right now. So we currently have that funding that is paying for a lot of our Sigma items. We already have consultants for that. We are going to be working on an RFP because now that we are kind of onto this new level or this next maturing step, we're going to need a consultant to be doing all of these Sigma compliance items. So we're working on an RFP. That's something that we'll also bring to the ad hoc, not necessarily maybe in that next week, but it is something that we'll bring to the ad hoc and then bring to the board. Also, just want to note that I know that the calendar we approved the third Thursday, except for today and also for February. If you could adjourn the meeting to February 26th, that will allow us to be a regular meeting. And then also just regards, because we were talking about tribal outreach, wanted to give you an update. So DWR offers facilitations support services, in which one of their tasks was to do a thorough investigation of all of the tribes in the basin and to reach out to them multiple times to see if they were interested in that position or even just learning more about the GSA. We did not get very many responses, but she is writing up a memo so that the GSA will be able to kind of write out and say, this is what we've done for that engagement, and then leave the door open for if anyone does want to continue with that. So that is what I have for you today for my program, or for my program manager's report.
Anybody from the public like to speak? Well, then I won't tell you what we can and can't do. I'll close public comment.